Tonight about a bear euthanized in the Smokies. An autopsy report released yesterday revealed that a ginseng hunter eaten by a bear actually died from a meth overdose. Searchers found the body of William Hill back in September, and at the time, rangers didn't know how Hill died, and they chose to euthanize the bear. Well, the story has more than 190,000 reactions on our Facebook page, more than 1,300 shares, and 270 comments. In those comments, many of you asked why the park euthanized the bear, and others asked if the bear would become more aggressive after tasting human flesh.
WBIR 10 News anchor Sean Franklin talked to park rangers and a bear expert, and he has this 10 Listens report.
It's a story sparking debate on the WBIR Facebook page. Should a bear found scavenging a human body be euthanized? Tiffy Stallsworth commented, "They killed the bear because he was eating human flesh. There's no coming back for a bear that has tasted human meat. He would be a threat. Regardless of how the person died, the bear was eating a human corpse, which turns the bear into a threat to others."
The data doesn't exist to answer that question. These incidences are so rare across North America and the rest of the world where bears exist that there really isn't a lot of data to be able to say one way or the other.
Mark Persino is the former supervisor of the large carnivores section of the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. He's one of several experts the Smokies Rangers sometimes turn to in bear cases. We took other concerns to Persino. Lydia Boatwright said, "And now the bear is dead. Infuriates me that they couldn't wait until after the autopsy before they killed it." Persino says they couldn't wait because bears are quick to learn certain behaviors.
We don't know for sure whether that ultimately manifests itself into some other behavior that might be harmful to people.
That's why Great Smoky Mountains Park spokesperson Dana Sohn says rangers bring in a lot of different expert opinions to make the best decision.
Our goal is to help bears stay wild in the park.
Sohn says since 1990, the park has euthanized less than one bear a year. She says if you're going camping or just hanging out in the Smokies here, always follow proper procedure to avoid attracting bears. Back to you.
Sean Franklin answering your questions, and if you have a story idea or a question, please email 10listens@wbir.com, or you can call us at that number on your screen.
Well, if it says made in China,